Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. Today we're talking about the Katana World from the Buddyfight x Vanguard collab, and I was super excited for this when I woke up for it because we have Zanya Kisaragi and his buddy Byakuya and Tsukikage, as well as one of my favorite cards of all time, Secret Sword Lethal Formation. So super excited to get this. Gonna go through the rad line first, then all the cards. It plays very similar to Veleno, but a little bit more like control style. Does 5 attacks just like Veleno, which we'll get to in the ninja cards later. But yeah, if you do really like the impressions of this, definitely check out Katana World and do check out the collab once it comes to English. We got the official release date for November 21st. So first off, we have the Katana World flag. Very straightforward stuff, basically the same as the Buddyfight flag. And for those who don't know, your rad line is 6 cards. You have the 0 basically to 3, and the 0 goes into the rad line along with the buddy, and then you also have a gauge generator instead of the energy generator. Alright, so now for the rad line, we're going to start with Aibo Academy Zanya Kisaragi. This is the grade 1. So auto, when this is placed by routing from Katana World, which is your starter, you cast reveal grade 3 card with Zanya discarding for your rad deck and put a Shinobi Scrolls token directly into your order zone. Alright, so here is the Shinobi Scrolls token. It works very similar to the set order that it is in future card Buddyfight, and basically you're always using the first skill, which is the act in order zone. Once per turn, you cost pay 1 gauge, put a card from your hand, face down into the card's buddy zone, draw a card, and 99% of the time this is going to be a ninja arts or secret sword lethal formation, but you can put nut triggers or other things that aren't ninja arts. It's just you do get full value out of the card for ninja arts because you can cast it from the soul. So the second act is the act in the order zone, that once per turn you can choose a ninja arts other than blitz order. This card's buddy soul and play it, so this counts towards your order for turn. And this is same for the blitz order skill, so they're both once per turn. So this is the one you're using during your main phase, and then the fourth auto is the one you would use during your opponent's turn. Auto in order zone once per turn. When your Vanguard's attacked, you choose a ninja arts blitz order from this card's soul and play it. So basically, because Zanya's grade 3 skill, which is a little spoilers, does let you play 2 blitz orders a turn. This lets you play 1 from soul and 1 from your hand, so you're saving resources essentially. But unlike Veleno, Zanya doesn't actually have the CC skill, which is a little bit weak, but you do have the once per game buddy call for that counter charge and other resources. Again, that's like some of the problems that I noticed with the deck, that you have a little bit restricted on CB, but your gauge isn't too big of a problem. And then the third auto is the auto in order zone. At the end of your turn, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Zanya on its card name and you do not have a Secret Sword Lethal Formation in your order zone, you cost pay 3 gauge and declare final phase. You choose a Secret Sword Lethal Formation from this card's buddy soul and put it to your order zone. So Secret Sword Lethal Formation can activate from hand through its auto, but instead of doing that, you can instead shove this to soul and then basically draw 1. So you're essentially not minusing 1 from your hand in order to play the once per game impact. Alright, now for my favorite card, Secret Sword Lethal Formation. You've stepped right on my trap. We have continuous, you cannot play this card, so just like all the other impacts, and then auto from hand, it activates if you didn't play from Shinobi Scroll, let's say. At the end of your turn, if you have a grade 3 or greater card with Zanya in its card name and your order zone does not have Secret Sword Lethal Formation, so basically you can only have 1, you cost pay 3 gauge and declare final phase and put this card into the order zone. And then auto, when this card is put into the order zone, you search your deck or drop for up to 1 card, put it face down as this card's buddy soul, and if you search the deck, shuffle the deck. So this is very similar to how it works in the game, where you are searching basically a secret sword and shoving to soul, but this time you're searching essentially a trigger. So you can think of this card essentially as a nullify of the trigger once per game. So you have continuous order zone. When your opponent's draw check would reveal trigger other than healed over, if this card's face down buddy soul has the same trigger icon as that revealed card, you can turn it face up and reveal it. If you do, you nullify the power increase effect from your opponent's trigger effects and perform one of the following according to that trigger icon. So if it's a critical, your opponent's Vanguard gets -1 critical until end of battle. Draw, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and discards it, and then front, all your opponent's front row gets minus 10k power until the end of turn. So essentially it's nullifying the trigger effect for that battle. I do really dislike that the critical effect does not basically target a rear. Like, you have to target Van. So, and also it's until end of battle. So for like effects like Varga or Overlord, whatever Vanguards that are restanding, it's really weak. So I do wish they buffed it like that a little bit more. But it is really cool that it's kind of similar to like the V or other like crazy cards they made in like that are available in premium that basically reverse your opponent's trigger effects, because we don't really have anything like this in standard. This is technically like new. So I think this is a very interesting way, and a lot of the blitz orders that we'll see later play very control style, very similar to Veleno, but like a little bit more restrictive. So I think it's really exciting that standard is finally getting something this restrictive. I really wish it didn't take the Buddyfight collab to get something like this. Veleno would love if it got some of the Katana World's blitz orders that we'll look at later. First off, impressions from the rad line, not even getting to the grade 3. Shinobi Scrolls is a really good cycle. This card is really good. It'll definitely help you live a turn in like a very fast standard format. Again, I do wish the crit was able to target rear. You're probably never using the draw one. You're likely going for a crit or front. But the fact that it's until end of turn is really strong for the front skill. And while you wouldn't think a lot of decks are playing fronts right now, you'd actually be pretty surprised, because a lot of decks are playing fronts for the shield and just to have that big power to kill. But a lot of decks in the meta are playing fronts over draws just for the shield value, and the fact that minus 10k lasts until end of turn is probably the strongest part of Secret Sword Lethal Formation, honestly. I think the crit effect is really strong just because it can essentially save you PG when you would basically have to take an attack, and then you can use your other blitz orders or hand cards to guard the sides instead. But yeah, really does suck. It's not until end of turn. I wish there was like a clause for restanding Vanguard or something. But yeah, honestly, really happy with Secret Sword Lethal formation. I think it's a little bit mid, not gonna lie. Again, like the crit effect has that weaknesses. The front until end of turn is really nice. And there is also a restand inhibitor as well as a blitz order, which we will get to later. Alright, so we have first rank in elementary school division, Zanya Kisaragi. This is a reference to where Kiri is just roasting him for not being able to win the cup of the school for Aibo Academy. So the grade 2 Radland is auto when rode upon by grade 3 with Zanya. Its card name, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, you choose up to 1 Ninja Arts or Ninja without Sentinel from among them, reveal it, put into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So again, the Ninja Arts, Art of Duplication is a Sentinel, so basically you can't grab Sentinels off the Radline. For check top 5, basically add anything because like 90% of your deck is Ninja Arts and Ninjas anyways, is really good. Alright, so now we have the grade 3 aim to be the ninja user of justice, Zanya Kisaragi. This is reference to his basically fight with the other ninja where he was referencing his journey to become a buddy police officer. So you have continuous during your opponent's turn, you can play up to 2 orders. So technically not the same as Veleno, because Veleno lets you play an additional order every time, technically because of the wording and also CCs. But yeah, you can play up to 2 orders on your opponent's turn, so basically 2 blitz orders instead of the normal 1. And then active Vanguard Circle once per turn, you counter +1, choose to 1 each of a Ninja Arts without Sentinel and a Ninja without Sentinel each from your drop and put them into your hand. So CB1 to +2 essentially. The reason that there's without Sentinel for both the Ninja and Ninja Arts is because there are normal PGs as well as Art of Duplication, which is a Sentinel Order PG. So basically you can't ditch those and then salvage them back from the Radline, which kind of sucks. I don't know why they have that because Ninja Arts of Duplication, which we'll get to later, already removes itself. Again, it's basically made it so you can't salvage any PGs back. But yeah, +2 every turn. Unfortunately, the deck does not have very good ways to acquire Ninja Arts besides the Radline and like charge and draw, but you also have Shinobi Scrolls as well. So technically you're going through 3 cards through your deck every turn, so that should be enough. And then he has his third skill, which is Clear Serenity, the classic Gauge 3 spell. Active Vanguard Circle, once per turn, you cost soul +1, choose 3 cards to your drop, and put it face down as Gauge. So thank goodness you'll know what your Gauge is, and you won't have to Gauge from decks, so deck out isn't too big of an issue. I definitely saw this when playtesting Gao, and it wasn't too much of a problem with Tsuku, but it's really good. Thank goodness the Clear Serenity does not charge through your deck, because you are going through deck pretty fast. You'd be surprised with your charge and draw as well as with Shinobi Scrolls, because you want to do that every turn to essentially plus and basically have Ninja Arts played from Soul through Shinobi Scrolls, and then, you know, your additional Blitz order from hand. So honestly, after going through the deck, and I obviously read all the cards beforehand, the deck looks really solid. It does look like a little bit weaker Veleno just because the rears are a lot smaller. Veleno is buffing all your rears, and Zanya doesn't, unfortunately. But the ninjas are reaching decent numbers once we get to them, and the blitz orders are also very strong. So I'm really glad that we have kind of like a control niche deck now in standard. It does kind of suck. We had to wait for a collab to get this, and I wonder how strong the set 10 fairy guideline will be, and going forward if we'll get more control deck in standard, because I think they'd be pretty scared to make anything too strong control wise in standard, and then meanwhile we have Bab that hits like 60+ with like insane numbers. Honestly, really happy with how Zanya turned out. I think looking at the deck cohesively, I'm definitely going to proxy play test and give updates on it, but it's probably around tier 2-ish. I definitely don't think it's like a top meta deck, but it seems really fun to play, and has really good control pieces to kind of like try and prolong the game and then eventually kill through your Persona Rides. And the deck does 5 attacks, spoilers, which is really solid. So that's basically the summary of Zanya's deck, right? Alright, you have 5 Heavenly Swords, Onimaru. So you arm this to your Vanguard by paying 1 gauge as the cost. And then auto Vanguard Circle, when this unit armed with it attacks, it gets plus 5k until end of battle, so Zanya will be 18. And then costs Soul Blast 1 until the end of battle. It also gets crit +1, but you have to send the item to drop afterward. So this is basically your crit pressure. Veleno kind of gets this like for free for just having 5 rears or ninjas. I wish that's what this deck did. So it's very restrictive. I think you might want to play maybe 3 copies, maybe 4. I'm not too sure about space. I need to like proxy playtest the deck first and see how it feels. Because the thing is, like, you do want that crit pressure every turn from Van, but, you know, you're eating up basically a 0 shield, 1 card from your hand to play at every turn. I think you want to keep the 5, but so thank goodness the Soul Blast 1 cost is, like, well, not optional, but, you know, the cost is optional there. So if you don't pay the cost, you're not doing the rest of the card. So you can't just keep this card just with the +5, just to be 18 or whatever with, like, if Byakuya is behind you, your Vanguard's 18 + 13, so you're 31, which is kind of a nice number just to grind out your opponent. The Grit +1 is basically just there for when your opponent's at lethal damage and you really want to grind cards out of their hand. Alright, so now for the exciting cards, we have the Ninja Arts, and these are my favorite cards. They're adapted very faithfully into the game, and the first one I want to cover is Art of Explosive Hades Fall, and people know this for setting up ambush and for basically counter popping your opponent's stuff for the on-place check. So we have, you know, it's a set order, you pay for 1 gauge. When this card is put into your order zone, you search your deck for up to 1 card, you put it face down into this card's buddy soul, and then shuffle your deck. So your opponent doesn't know what it is. just like, you know, in Buddyfight. And then Auto Order Zone, when your opponent's rear guard is placed during your opponent's main phase, you cost discard a card from this card's Buddy Soul. If the card of the grade discarded for this cost is equal to the grade of the place unit, you retire that unit. So the abilities of the on place don't get nullified, they'll still go off for the on place, but essentially you just pop it during the main phase. So I think this is really interesting. I do kind of wish we didn't have to wait until a Buddyfight collab to get something like this, but this is super faithful to Hades' Fall. And so essentially what this does is pretty much ruin your opponent's game plan. So for example, if like against Bav, they want to call Yugma shit or something, boom, you just pop that, Bav goes, I guess I can't call this back from drop unless I'm playing Shroud and Shadow. Crazy, it's gone just like that. So I think it's really cool. This is kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! Hand trappy in a sense, because with Buddyfight, there was a lot of counter timing, with Vanguard, not really. And yes, this is retire, so anti-retire does, you know, stop this. For example, like if Ava's calling their Obsidians during main phase, you know, with crit +1, you go, oh, I'd like to retire that. And then they go, no, I have research of henceforth in my order zone. This can't be retired. And you go, well, for a person that plays matchups, this is still really strong, because for people that know matchups and know specific rears that, you know, can be retired and are really powerful, you can easily play into them and kind of like set up a trap where you know you want to kill that specific rear, or you can kill boosters, which is really strong and helps guarding throughout the entire turn, especially if it's like Virgilia, for example, and they're on Elf Knights and they're restanding their boosters in that column repeatedly. But I mean, to be fair, Flame Cosmo can proc again during the main phase. I believe it's once per turn, because if it goes to drop, I believe it'll reset. But you know, I would still check Judge Rulers for that. Anyways, I'm kind of yapping away, but the point of this card is that it's pretty exciting in my opinion. I do wish we got something like this in Standard earlier. I think some people will look at this collab and think it's kind of ridiculous. But I mean, Anti-Retire still beats this. This does not seem to target, by the way, because it does not say choose. It just simply retires the unit if it's the same grade and it checks. And again, your on places will still resolve, that Kairos notes here in the translation. So yeah, I think it's really exciting, very faithful to the original. Some people might hate it. There's a lot of decks that still play around it, like the examples I gave earlier, such as like Ava. You know, decks that have multiple main phase calls can still, you know, be like, oh, you killed this? Okay, I'll just call it back from drop. Problem solved. But I mean, in certain matchups, this card can be very, very impactful, especially for people that know the matchups or what rears do in certain decks. Alright, so the next card is a normal order, Fuuton Sweeping Whirlwind. This was actually an X promo that was used basically for a bunch of gauge and draw and utility. So you have an order ability, choose a ninja unit without sentinel from your drop, put it into your hand. So easy salvage during your main phase. The other ability is auto. When it's discarded from your hand by a card ability, put the top card of deck into your gauge and draw 1. So this is basically to be comboed with Byakuya's restand cost, because yes, Byakuya's here and he can restand, so that's how you get 5 attacks, and this card is a really good combo piece. At worst, you could always put this into Soul with Shinobi Scrolls, but usually you're going to keep it in hand as pitch fodder. Because it has to be discarded by a card ability, it does not work for ride decks, so it's not unfortunate, you know, like Drago Wisdom where you can ditch it and then bind it and then gauge and draw. So unfortunately, it does have to be pitched by a card ability, which kind of sucks, and it seems like Byakuya so far is the only thing revealed until we get more card of the days that is proccing this, but still really solid card all around. So one of the best blitz orders I think that the deck got is Sword Skill Barehand Intercept, and it is very restrictive, but we'll go over it first. So choose one of your units being attacked, it gets plus 15k until end of battle. If your opponent's attacking unit is a Vanguard, you may draw 1. So +1 for playing the blitz order is really great, because Zanya doesn't have a built-in effect like, you know, Lascaria in Veleno to, you know, just draw 1 for playing a blitz order or counter charge. So this is really good. You can of course chain this twice because you're playing 2 blitz orders, so you could go like 30k to your Vanguard, draw 2, which is really solid, and then those are your 2 blitzes for the turn. But you do have to keep in mind that because your basically Art of Body replacement, or if you're playing Elementari on this deck, is a blitz order, that would take up one of your slots for the turn, even though it's only 2, because you can't chain it like Veleno. You're hard stuck to 2 due to Zanya's ability. Really interesting card. I do like the draw 1. It's very restrictive because again, you're only drawing 1 if your opponent's attacking unit is a Vanguard. Very restrictive, but definitely a very interesting card nonetheless. And I love the reference to the original card, because if you're being attacked by a weapon, you just draw 1. So it's a reference to basically the fighter attacking you directly. Alright, now one of the really, really interesting cards that I did not think we were going to get as a Ninja Arts, but we did, is Snake Gaze. And so this card in Buddyfight was pay 1 life to rest a card on your opponent's field, and here they've adapted it to be an anti-restander effect. So blitz order, choose one of your units being attacked, it gets plus 50k until end of battle. So basically same shield as the one we just looked at, which is really, really nice. It's not a 10k shield, it's a 15k shield, which is very important. And then cost, discard a card from your hand, choose one of the attacking rearguards, and that unit gets continuous rearguard circle. This unit cannot stand until end of turn. It does definitely have weaknesses, again, for choosing stuff like, let's say, for fighting Virgilia, they use Variance Ray Dragon. You can't target Urzur for what we know from now, based on the wording of this card. It would not work because you have to choose the unit. And also any effects that's already restaying the Vanguard, not end of battle, which are like basically pre-DZ kind of restanders for rears, essentially. they're not basically, going to be affected by this because they're already stood at this point. For the on attack for Vanguard, it really depends on the timing of the restand, but in some matchups, this is still very, very interesting. The fact that this can just, tell your opponent no to a restand, because like really the only other effect we've gotten, I don't think we've gotten a cannot restand effect. I think we've just gotten debuffs for minus power through like the Regulus piece, Sound of Wave, and other cards. So I think this is very, very interesting. I was really hoping to see more stuff like this in standard, like just more defensive power creep. It kind of, I'm kind of complaining that it took like a Buddyfight collab, like years into DZ or years into Overdress to get something like this. But, it's still really neat that this kind of interaction exists. And, once this comes to English and, once it comes to JP next month, people are going to have to be aware that this exists. So, if you don't know the matchup, you get completely screwed over by this card, essentially. But yeah, really interesting card. Again, has big weaknesses before. Like I said, if it chooses, it's not doing anything. If there's anything like Vanguard attacks, boom, restand, then guard timing occurs. You're like, oh, that unit's already stood. Why would I give it the red text? It's kind of useless, but very fascinating card nonetheless. All right, so here we have the Sentinel Blitz order. We have Art of Body Replacement, the classic Nullify. So it's a continuous Sentinel. You play it with ditching card from your hand. You choose one of your units, cannot be hit until end of battle, your classic PG, and then choose a ninja without Sentinel from your drop and put it into your hand, and then it removes itself from the game. So PG that salvages one, very nice. Like 90% of your deck is ninjas. I wish this could salvage a Ninja Arts without Sentinel from drop, so you had a way to get your Blitz orders back, because we actually didn't get Electro Ninja Shiden. Like, we did not get Mr. Draw 2, cyber analysis. So you have to just salvage, normal units, and you don't really have a way to get good Blitz orders out of deck besides your charge and draw. But I think that should be enough for the deck. But we'll wait until the full set comes out and we get more like cohesive deck lists. But definitely love this card. Art of Body Replacement, iconic card for Buddyfight. I also want to note, after Art of Body Replacement, we have Accelerate Ninja Hayate, and this is actually the mover from the TD that we got basically as the Sentinel of the deck for the Overdress PGs, and this was actually a card of the day, not from the live stream. Alright, now we have covered everything from the ride line, the Blitz orders, and the item. Now we finally have the ninjas, the best card of the deck, or best cards of the deck, I should say, because they're all great. We have Nanomachine Ninja Tsukikage here, so auto, when he's placed on Vanguard Circle, if you did not call another Nanomachine Ninja Tsukikage this turn, you cost, pay 1 gauge, retire this unit. Search your deck or drop for a total of 2 grade 2 or less ninja units with different card names from this card. Without Sentinel, reveal them, put your hand. If you search your deck, shuffle, and you don't need to pitch. So very similar to the Tsukikage Re-B effect, except basically instead of pitching, you're basically retiring himself. And then he's continuous rearguard circle. During your opponent's turn, if this unit would leave the rearguard circle, you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, leave this unit on rearguard circle. So again, reference to Tsukikage's ability to just keep himself on board. Body duplication, my favorite. So honestly, really good card. This searches Gojinmaru. This searches Byakuya, which are your restanders in this deck, and it could also search up any of your pieces really that are helping you set up a board. So this card is amazing because assuming we get a Buddyfight collab in the future, in a second set, even if we don't, any other card of the days that are like grade 2 or less ninjas are easily addable off this Tsukikage, which gives it so much value. So you're probably playing this as the buddy just because if you call this, you're basically just plussing 2 because you countercharge, and then you call 2 units off the Tsukikage. So probably gonna make either this the buddy or Byakuya SD. I'll probably figure it out once I do some proxy playtesting. But yeah, definitely an amazing card. Like, just being able to tutor any 2 cards out of your deck, and again, it's gauge, so it's equivalent of basically energy. Your opponent can't deny you those resources. Alright, now we have Nanomachine Ninja Byakuya, Zanya's other buddy. It has Shadow Dive, continuous rearguard circle. During the battle, this unit attacks, your opponent cannot intercept. So reference to basically your opponent not being able to block attacks because, Shadow Dive attacks through center to attack the fighter directly. And then you have auto rearguard circle once per turn. When your grade 3 greater Vanguard with Zanya and his card name attacks, you cost, discard a card from your hand and stand this unit. And then auto rearguard circle when this unit attacks a grade 3 greater unit. If you have a rearguard with Tsukikage or Gojinmaru's card name, easiest thing in the world, gets plus 5k. So not crazy numbers. The deck does seem to want to kind of play a little grindy. And again, that ditch effect is pretty costly unless you're ditching the Whirlwind that we looked at earlier, which when ditched, you buy card ability, you get to gauge and draw. This is basically here to enable an extra attack that is CB-less because Gojinmaru uses CB. But yeah, really, really glad at how faithfully they adapted Byakuya, and, he restands like he does in Buddyfight, so I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, now for the dual ninja form, Ghoul Deity Gojinmaru. So call cost, pay 1 gauge, put a unit with Tsukikage's card name and a unit with Byakuya's card name, each from your rearguard circle into this card's buddy soul. That is the cost you gotta pay. And then auto rearguard circle, when it attacks, if this unit's buddy soul has a ninja, it gets plus 5k inside in a battle, and the card we'll look at later, Byakuya SD, gives another plus 5, so he'll be 20 essentially. And then Shadow Dive continues Rearguard Circle during the battle attack, your opponent cannot intercept. And he also has the double attack ability, which is auto Rearguard Circle once per turn. At the end of the battle that this unit attacked, if your Great Theory Greater Vanguard is stood, you cost counter +1 and stand this unit, continue with Soul Guard. So basically, he has to do the restand before your Vanguard swings. Once Byakuya swings, both units will be stood anyways. And he also has Soul Guard as well, so anytime he would leave, he basically stays by dropping a Buddy Soul, just like we looked at for Drum and Jackknife. Honestly, really satisfied with how Gojinmaru turned out too. Shadow Dive, of course, is faithful to the original. You have to play both costs, for Byakuya and Tsukikage to get him to soul. Once you do, he's a double attacker. He's kind of hard to get rid of once he has 2 soul. You can essentially stack up 3 souls, so he's really hard to get rid of. And, he's a double attacker, so he's setting up multi-attacker. If they try to get rid of it, you're like, okay, I'll just call him back. You can also search him off Tsukikage to set up because he's a grade 2 or less ninja. So very, very easy to set up. Really good attacker of the deck, hard to get rid of. Will stick around, keep getting shield out of your opponent's hand unless they keep attacking it. Alright, so with Nanomachine Ninja Tsukikage SD, so auto when this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, you cost pay 1 engage, choose it to 1 Nanomachine Ninja Byakuya SD from your drop and call to Rearguard Circle. That's also a reason to maybe make this the buddy as well, however you want it, because Byakuya SD is a 13k booster, spoilers. And then at Rearguard Circle, you choose one of your ninja rearguards. If that unit's Buddy Soul does not have a card with the same name as the unit, put into the card's Buddy Soul. So interesting to note that this does support with Ultimate Buddy, the generic that we got revealed in Drums Week 2 weeks ago. So you could technically give any card in your deck once your buddy is called, Soul Guard, and then shove this in. And then continuous, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 greater, your unit with this card in its Buddy Soul gets plus 5k power and plus 5k shield, also active on your opponent's turn. So very solid stuff, because this deck really, really needs more power to beat. I think if this deck is not finding Persona rights, it's going to have a lot of issues pushing. And, that shield plus 5 is really nice because Gojinmaru basically becomes, or any of your other ninjas, basically becomes a 10k shield, or maybe bigger depending on what we get in the future. So yeah, really solid card all around. Really nice that it uses Gauge and not Soul or anything else to basically, because all your souls basically go into Zanya's grade 3 skill to get Clear Serenity and Gauge up. Really nice that this is just really easy 1 Gauge to basically +1 of free rear. And Byakuya SD is definitely one of the much needed boosters to help make numbers in this deck. Alright, so there he is, Nanomachine Byakuya SD, love this art. Shadow Dive continues Rearguard Circle during the battle this unit attacks, your opponent cannot intercept, so Shadow Dive reference again. Then auto Rearguard Circle, when this unit attacks or boosts, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and you have a Rearguard with Tsukikage or Gojinmaru's card name, which is like the easiest thing in the world, this unit gets power plus 5k until end of battle, so generic 13k booster wherever he is. You might want this behind Van, because again, like Van with the armed sword is only 18, very easy to guard. On Persona Ride, it'll be 28, so it's a little bit harder, but having this always helps, and again, it's easy to get him onto board with Tsukikage SD. And it's also interesting to note as well that for Tsukikage SD, the card we just covered, it does not require you to not basically have multiple copies on the board, because a lot of overdress cards will basically say, if you don't have a card of the same name, then you can call it. These cards don't have that ability, because it's very faithful to the original, where you would just call Byakuya SD back from drop. So it's very easy to set up those boosters. I guess most of the time you're probably shoving like Tsukikage SD into Soul to give Gojinmaru more Soul for Soul Guard, or you can just keep him as 8k booster somewhere, maybe behind Van, because Van with 13k power from the sword will be 21, and then your size will usually be reaching like 33 or bigger, whatever, between Gojinmaru or Byakuya, and then Byakuya booster, because Byakuya on his own is really only like 15, Gojinmaru's were 20, so, and then the boosters are 13, so the numbers aren't the greatest in terms of pushing. You're definitely playing this deck as a very controlled grind game, which I think is very accurate to how Katana World is. So yeah, overall really happy with the cards. Gonna check if there's anything else I need to cover, and then I'll give a summary of the deck. Alright, so before I get into basically a summary of the deck, and I'll just do scrolling images while I talk about this, we have SECs revealed, and these are the Buddy Ragnarok arts, which are absolutely sick, especially for Jack and Tsuku. They look amazing. Not the biggest fan of Gowan drums, honestly, but I think Tsuku and, Zanya's look like really, really good, the SECs. We also got Ultimate Rares, which are basically like Buddyfight SPs, like full arts. So like SPs in Buddyfight, which look really nice. Again, we had Buddy Rares from last week, and we also got confirmed through Kairos translation, it was actually a slide, that we're getting Holos, which is amazing because like if you play Vanguard, you're stuck with commons forever, especially for your Rylines. So I think it's really, really cool that they brought that over. Alright, I'm looking at the recording now, it's 33 minutes, but I do want to give a big summary of the deck. Alright, so going through everything from Zanya, we have, very solid blitz orders to kind of basically play your late game. A lot of the cards aren't really refueling themselves though, besides like, Art of Body Replacement, other cards, but those aren't grabbing ninja arts. So I think your count of getting blitz orders are really hard, at least for the ninja arts. And I do wish, we get Shiden or something else that's, going to get revealed, where it's going to be easier to salvage either blitz orders from drop or, search them from deck, because you're already doing enough deck thinning with this deck, honestly. between, you know, your charge and draw, your other stuff, maybe not too much selective deck thinning, but you have enough resources to go through deck fast enough. I think deck out is still probably a problem for these Buddyfight decks in the late game because you charge and draw every turn essentially, unless you want to lose that gauge resource. And, you know, once you get to late game, you don't really have good ways to recover it. For example, Veleno has basically resources through rears that, you know, sacrifice themselves to grab 2 blitz orders back from drop. This deck doesn't really have that. You have 1 salvage through Zanya, but I wish there was like a way to get 1 more. So I'm hoping Shiden will either do that or draw 2. You know, draw 2 kind of might put you a little bit faster to deck out going into like turn 5 or late games. But, you know, really hope that we get some really solid commons or rares. I'm recording this right now at like 8-ish, so by the time I get uploaded, the card of the day will probably be up. So I'll make a comment about that once I see it, if that is a new card that really helps with the deck. But yeah, that's definitely one of the problems so far. You know, you put blitz orders into, or you can put your normal orders once you get more of those revealed into Shinobi Scrolls, and that will basically set up your, you know, additional blitz order for the turn and kind of save you hand that way. Same for Secret Sword Lethal Formation. You know, you still don't have really good ways to find those orders though, except for the rad line, which is only a top 5, by the way, for Ninja or Ninja Arts. It's not even a top 7. So definitely the biggest weakness of the deck so far without even proxy playtesting the deck. I think the numbers are looking really weak, especially for standard. Really wish Zanya gave like +5 to all ninjas, or maybe there'll be a new set order that does that. I hope so, because and the Ninja Arts are really good. I think the ride line could use a little bit of work. They're not overtuned and they're all pretty much free. Like all your soul is basically going to clear Serenity, your CB is going to salvage, and for basically, you know, any other cost really to set up your Ninja Arts. So, you know, I think the deck is really solid. You know, 5 attacks, you have a good control package. I think it still has a lot of weaknesses that when you look at a deck like Veleno. You know, Veleno has easier, bigger numbers, constant crit to van pressure. This deck doesn't really have that, has to do a lot of work to get that going. You know, its rear powers aren't the greatest, and you always have to drop that sword basically and lose it to get that crit pressure. I mean, again, you can choose not to pay that soul boss 1 cost in order to keep the sword and like save it for turns where your opponent's at damage where a crit +1 to van is more impactful. For example, like if they're at 4 damage or whatnot. But yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with how this turned out. I don't think this deck is going to be a meta contender despite how amazing the control package is, but you know, it's too early to say, and I do hope that this deck is good because I think it adds a lot of interesting things to standard. I know some people really don't like control in standard. I know people who are like doom posting about Artisaria and whatnot, but you know, going forward, like it's really the only way to kind of help, you know, mitigate the insane power creep that we have until Bushi prints like generics that say like, oh, 50k more power, you know, this is an extra PG, or some other minus crit like how we have heals and premiums, things like that try to slow down the game. But I think standard's at a good enough rate where the games do feel fast enough but not too long. I do think that a lot of the decks right now in the meta, at least the best decks, are like ending the game turn 3 or 4 sometimes, especially with how many decks have really good early game and strong late game. But, you know, it's kind of hard to say we're standard right now. I think standard, at least in JP set 9, is in a decent spot right now, especially after Bat just got hit. I did not want to make a video on that because like that's too much yapping to do for one ban list. That really, the ban list can just be summarized as Bat died and Bav got a slap on the wrist. Then that's basically it. But yeah, I'm just yapping away. I think this reveal was amazing. I'm looking at the recording now. It's 40 minutes. I don't know how long it's gonna be once you see this, but thank you so much for watching. I can't believe I yapped about Katana World for basically like 40 minutes. And I think the deck is like amazing. I don't think it's going to be a meta contender like I said before, but I think it's going to be really fun, and I can't wait to play this. Either proxy playtest it and get it in English once it comes out in November. But thank you so much for watching. Do like and subscribe, share the video, whatever it is, and let me know what you think of these cards and if you're going to be building the deck. So thank you so much for watching, and see ya.